guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another episode of SPTV. We're going to do another episode of Marc and Mitch Make a Scientology Film. Let's get Mitch in here.
Hey guys. Hey,
Hello,
Marc.
Mitch.
Good to see you. How's everything going?
Good to see you too. Good,
Great.
good.
Thanks.
We're going to
refresh
do
my memory. Which one are we doing tonight?
we're doing EM2 E-meter reads.
Oh, right.
So
Great.
This is a big deal film because every single student that learns how to use the e-meter in Scientology, they have to watch this film at least many hundreds of times, maybe even thousands of times during the course of their auditing and e-meter training. They'll watch this individual film.
Yeah, it's insane. More times than any of us have seen Die Hard.
Well, yeah, this is one of those films that it's not a hard film to shoot per se, because it's not a lot of, I mean, for this one we really just had auditing room sets and lots and lots of close-ups on the e-meter, right? That's what I remember when we did this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tedious, it's a tedious film to shoot. That's how I remember it. Yeah. Because you had pretty much every shot was the same frame. It was just different talent for each read. And then you had the reads, right, which we'll get into. And then we had to illustrate a bunch of the reads with special effects, right? Remember, like, we'll talk about these, but like the rocket read and these bizarre kind of reads.
Yeah. Like reads. We got to back up, I guess, because there might be people watching this that don't know what a Scientology e-meter is.
Right.
And there's another film, that we made, which is the film after this one, which is called The History of the E-meter.
Oh, right.
Which you think that would be the first film that they would have on the e-meter. I don't know, but it would be EM1, but EM1 is a completely other film that we're going to talk about. But regardless, the e-meter was developed by a guy in England called Volney Matheson. And Matheson made this e-meter, and it was sort of like a parlor trick. He would put somebody on this e-meter, and then he'd ask them questions, and this big needle would move around on the meter. And the first meters were actually, they had projectors built into them. So you could put this meter in the front of a stage where you were doing this counseling or just asking this person questions, and it would project on a big screen, and everybody that you're doing the lecture to could see what the meter was doing. Right. And then Hubbard started using a small version of this thing, and it was called the Matheson meter. And then he eventually was using it so much that Matheson didn't want, when Hubbard was starting to, ask people questions about their past and trying to do counseling with it, Volney Matheson was like, I'm not into this. And so Hubbard had the e-meter just reverse engineered, and then they made their own e-meter, a Scientology e-meter. And we shot, when we did that history of the e-meter film, and even I think when we did a few different e-meter films, we actually had access to this guy, Don Breeding. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, for sure. He lived in San Diego. He didn't even live that far from gold.
Yeah, and he was one of the people that was originally working on these meters with Hubbard back in the day, when Hubbard was making them himself.
Right. He was a crazy
Scientology were making them themselves.
Yeah, I remember Don Breeding. He was like a crazy inventor. Like he was a very eccentric character.
Yeah, he was probably in his 60s or 70s when he was coming to the set and telling us about what we got done and all that good stuff. But to be very simple, the e-meter measures electrical resistance, and when you have these cans, and they're hooked up to the e-meter with a tip ring sleeve, like a guitar jack is what plugs into the e-meter. And then they used to have alligator clips on the other end, and you would just click it to cans, and you put one can in one hand and the other can in the other hand. And what the meter is measuring is a very, very small electrical current that it has a carrier wave traveling through it, and it's just because it's going through one hand and going into the other, it's measuring that the resistance created by your body, and then that demonstrates itself on this needle dial that has just it just has a little, very, very light little movement. That's the actual thing. The dial is called a movement that's in the needle is connected to that. So when it gets the wave, it gets the measures the resistance, and then it demonstrates that in how that reads on the e-meter. That's essentially what it is. And Scientology, this is a very contested sort of subject, because the e-meter, it's not exactly a lie detector, but it kind of works the same way a lie detector works, right?
Well, yeah, I think on one vector, there's a lie detector also reads a number of other vectors like your pulse and the amount of moisture in your skin and all kinds of things like that. But as we describe it, as it was described in Scientology, the e-meter puts a tiny trickle of electricity through the person's body. And then the theory is that the mental thought, which is, the brain is powered by electricity, is that as that thought shifted, it would affect this tiny trickle of electricity, and then that would show up as a read on the meter. And it actually works. The interpretation of what those reads mean is completely junk and is dangerous. But the fact that it is reacting to thought, that it's reacting to changes in what you're thinking about, that's just a provable fact. But the fact that somebody else is then taking that and interpreting it in such a way to completely gaslight you into believing something, that's where the meter is dangerous. Yeah. I mean, you remember the pinch test, Mark? I mean, the pinch test kind of shows that the meter does something.
Yeah. So Scientology does this thing. They'll have a booth somewhere out in the city, in like a walking street or some sort of high traffic area.
Well, more like a cheap card table with a
the little pop up, one of those tents you get from Walmart that you go camping and you set it up, one of these white fold out tents, and they'll put a table under that with an e-meter, and they'll tell people, would you like a free stress test? And then you sit down, and they say, and they give you these cans, and they hook you up to the e-meter, and they say, okay, we're going to do a test. And you go, okay. And then they pinch you. They tell you, I'm going to pinch you real quick. And then they pinch you on your arm or somewhere on your body. And then the needle goes, and it makes this movement on the dial. The needle goes when they pinch you. And then they say, okay. And then usually a person's like, ow. And you're like, okay, hold on. And then they say, the person doing the test says, okay, I want you to look at the needle. I want you to look at the e-meter. Okay, now recall the pinch. And then when you think about the pinch, the needle does the exact same thing. It goes poof, and it goes over. And that's usually the aha moment for somebody that's, stressed out and they want to know how they're going to fix it. They go, oh my God, that thing knew about the pinch.
Yeah, and they tell you that you've just seen a thought, like literally.
That's right. And that's actually, I think, how they sell it. They go, have you ever seen a thought before? Right. And then they do this whole demonstration. So that's not really a read per se that we would, is that, maybe it would be a long fall or a fall.
Well, whatever. It's a valid, what they would call a needle reaction. I mean, all of these reads they're categorized under the term reaction of the needle or meter reaction or something like that. And you have the list there. You want to pull that up? There's a list of e-meter reads. And
there we go.
Yeah, they are stuck needle, rock slam, tick, null, floating needle, speeded rise, falls. Anyway, you get the idea. I'm not going to read them all, but it's literally been categorized into these specific movements of the needle here. Usually when we're trying to demonstrate this, we use a pen, right?
Yes.
Anyway,
everybody. Yeah.
I'm
going to take the list out.
Yeah, take the list out.
You got it. If you want to see the list, you can freeze frame and you can read them all. But these were invented by L. Ron Hubbard or maybe by somebody else. And then he kind of.
You have to be trained to recognize these reads, right?
Yeah. So
You
when
have to be trained to recognize them, but also when you're training, remember, Mark, there was always one person or two people in the course room that were supposedly easy to get a read out of. So they were always the pop, like, oh, get him. He'll give you a floating needle, you know.
Yeah, there were certain people that had just a higher propensity to produce reads than other people, and some people had that you could never get the meter. There were certain people the meter just didn't really work that great on.
Yeah, because they were sort of electrically dense. I don't know.
It's a weird thing that there are. I remember for a long time I thought I was one of those people, because whenever I would go and do something on the e-meter, nothing would happen, and I would always end up being like, this sucks, I hate this, and I wouldn't want to do it anymore because nothing really, they would just keep asking me things over and over.
Right.
The way it works in Scientology is when they're doing the counseling, or what they call auditing, if you're the person on the e-meter, a lot of times they'll ask you questions, but you don't have to answer the questions physically with your mouth. They ask you the question, and then they look at the needle to see the answer. So whether you say yes or no, or I didn't do that, or I don't want that, it doesn't matter. They just pay attention. Really, the main thing they're looking at, they want to see, is the needle.
Yeah, if they say, so what's bothering you? Did you do something you're not telling me about? And you say no. But the needle does this. It goes, boom. They're going to say, well, what was that? And then because you believe in all this bullshit, you're going to think, oh my God, they just read my mind. The other thing I think is worth noting, the meter also stops working as soon as you stop believing in it. So, I mean, there's so many stories about people who are just like, once they pop their head out of it, they're like, go ahead, ask me anything. And it's just.
That's right. Well, that's what I was going to say, because I learned very early on. I joined the Sea Org in 1989, and then I started at the base in 1990. But in 1988, I went to see Depeche Mode, a band that I am quite fond of, and I went and saw them at the Rose Bowl, and I was front row center, and they sold out the Rose Bowl, and it was pretty much the best in concert that I'd ever been to in my life, because I wasn't even really that old, and I hadn't been to that many concerts. But whenever I would get in a tough spot while I was getting counseling, I would just think of that time when I was sitting front row, and I would think about the songs, and I would think about these just towered speakers and just the whole experience. And then I would get a floating needle on the e-meter. And then when you get when you're being asked these questions on the e-meter, the one that ends everything is the floating needle. If you have a floating needle, they're done. They can't go anymore.
Nope. As long as, well, you also have to have good indicators. Like you have to be smiling and stuff.
That's true.
Occasionally somebody will have a floating needle and they'll be crying and you can't stop them. But listen, moving right along.
Sitting there thinking about the Depeche Mode concert. I'm happy as can be. And I know, and also this was a kind of a double whammy, because once I figured out that would get a floating needle, then just thinking about it, I would feel better, because I'd be like, oh, this is going to be over in 2 minutes, because I just realized I started thinking about that. And I can see, you can tell by the auditor, they're like, oh, and they start writing notes, and when they're writing a lot of stuff and you're not saying anything, then you know, like, oh, something's happening over there on the meter.
We're good.
And they'll be like, and then they'll be like, you know what? We're going to end off right now. We're good for now. We're going to end that off. And, we're going to end the session. And then they actually, when the session is over, they tell you, they kind of give you a little, okay, we're going to wrap up, and and then they go, end of session. And then you go, okay, great. And then you go and you go to another person, and you get on a different e-meter. And then that person, you just sit down and hold the cans. And if your needle is floating, it's sort of like a double check. So if you faked out the last guy, when you go to this next person, if your needle's not really floating, then they say not, and then they say no FN, and then that means you got to go back in and
within 24 hours. So
within 24 hours,
it's rough.
And if you don't, the division of the organization that does the counseling, if you don't go back in session within 24 hours of not having a floating needle, then they lose all the count of all of the people that they counseled for an entire, I think it's a 24-hour period. They lose all those statistics. So it's very,
They
very
call it, what do they
heavily.
call it? Oh, they call it a
Red tag.
Right.
Yeah,
red
you get
tag. It's like soccer.
It literally is that
You get a red
the
card.
auditor gets a red card and they put it on your folder. And actually the auditor doesn't, the auditor gets the red, the counselor gets the red tag, but you also get the red tag.
Right.
And it might not be that person that takes you back in session,
Right.
because that person could have messed you up.
Right.
So when you have a red tag, usually they pan you off to another person that then is the person who is really a hotshot counselor who's going to make it so that red tag goes off.
Yeah, because they want to get out of trouble.
Yeah.
They're in trouble because they're part of that division. Okay, now drilling down specifically to these reads, there's 3 of these reads that I personally find kind of troubling.
Yeah.
One, the worst, is the rock slam, because a rock slam is like this erratic thing. It could be caused by the fact that your meter was made by a 14-year-old teenager who didn't know how to use a soldering gun.
Yes.
Lord, you know,
which to be honest is 99% of the reasons why that
I mean, yeah, today they're made in Taiwan, but I'm not sure that that's any different.
We don't know that they're not being made by 14-year-olds over
or
there.
Or 6-year-olds. Okay, like,
we don't know that.
We don't know. And we should know. So the rock slam, if you get a rock slam, you're in serious trouble. You're going to go straight to ethics. You're going to have your life turned upside down. You're going to have you're going to, anyway.
Well,
trying to stay
fair,
YouTube friendly.
If you're in the C organization, like if you've signed the billion-year contract and you work for Scientology, if you get a rock slam, you go to the RPF. That's an L. Ron Hubbard policy. That if you and there was a period of time where hundreds and hundreds of Sea Org members were being sent to the RPF because they were all rock slamming. Turned out it was the E-meters in the end, but they didn't tell any of those people.
Right.
But my own mother actually was assigned to the RPF for having a rock slam.
Right.
And she wrote a report every single day she was on the RPF and sent it to RTC. But the person who assigned her to the RPF worked in RTC by the time the reports were, and she was the reports off. So she was getting the reports from my mom, and she was just like shredding them. Right. But she, the kind of the thing that sealed the deal for my mom to have to go on the RPF was that she had a rock slam. And it was in her particular instance, because I worked at Golden Era, I was like, let me see if I can help her out and track this down. And we actually found out that the meter that she had the rock slam on had rock slammed on other people, and it was a faulty meter, and there was like just a cold solder joint in it.
Yeah, it was an SP meter.
It was an SP.
Yeah,
it was a rock slamming meter.
Yeah, I'm sure it was inhabited with BTs. Okay,
so that's the first bad one. What are the other two?
Okay, the next one that I find particularly troubling is called a theta bop.
Ooh,
now, I know that sounds like fun. That sounds like a hit song by Xenu and the Body Thetans. New hit song.
The Theta Bop. Do the Theta Bop. Theta Bop.
Yeah, Theta Bop should maybe be on a mug. I'm not sure.
Theta Bop.
It's a fun word. It's a really fun word. And it does this. See if I could remember it.
It's a dancing.
It goes like this. It goes over. I'm going to do it in slow motion. Then it does a little thing. And then it goes the other way, and it does a little thing, and it goes another way, a little thing. Now, this is how this is. Yeah.
I think the way the description of it is a sweeping move of the needle that dances at the ends.
Yeah, with a little.
Just dances at the end. That's what. I think that's how he describes it. If I remember correctly.
That rings a bell.
It does a little dance. That's maybe where the bop came from.
I think
that was a Hubbard thing. You know, he was around during the times of the bop.
They were going to call it the Theta Chubby Checker, but it was because that was the 50s. You know, when he came up with all this stuff. So what does the Theta Bop interpreted as? It basically means that you need a thing called an interiorization rundown because your int is out.
Yeah, you're instead of your attention being outside of you, all of your attention is on yourself, and you're basically kind of like in your head, or you're in your what they call in Scientology, you're in your case, or you're introverted. You're thinking about yourself instead of just doing your
maybe
thing.
You're just stuck on something. You've had some horrible hardship and you can't get your attention off of it. It's kind of what we would call normally in the larger world is you're very introverted. You're in a state of contrite introversion, and you could end up receiving some very lengthy invasive auditing because this interiorization rundown thing, it was not as bad as the introspection rundown, which is what, unfortunately,
That
some mentally ill people have been given to a very bad result. But it's not. It's kind of on. It's adjacent to the introspection rundown.
it's a close cousin of that one.
Yeah, it's a different mother, same father.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, definitely the same father.
Yeah, and then the other one was, I believe it was. Oh, and then the other one was the rocket read, and the rocket read was supposed. Remember, we did a graphic animation, and the person who was receiving the auditing, right? There was this animated drill that was
like
going.
I thought it was
like a jackhammer.
I thought it was like an electrical.
Yeah, like a ray gun.
It was electrical.
Yeah, it was totally, but it was like an electronic beam, like drilling into the guy's forehead, like and then the read was like and this meant you wanted to get the hell out of wherever you were, and you would get some very special treatment from that one. So some of these, the really odd ones really meant trouble for you. So, and then getting to the film, we just essentially showed each one of these reads. And I'm going to have to put him out in a minute because I'm almost out of treats.
He needs I was going to say his needle is not floating right now.
No. He's theta bopping like mad. He's about to start rock slamming. I wish I still had my meter. But it's amazing.
I know.
I started with the little wooden Mark V. I don't know if anybody's seen that one, if it means anything, but that was.
So first meter that Hubbard made back in the 50s and the 60s, it was a wood box, and the front was a piece of plexiglass, and all the electronic components and knobs and dials and everything were built into that front panel, and you could just unscrew, I think it was 4 screws, and just take the whole thing apart. And those cost a few $100s. Well, by the time Scientology got into the 1980s, that was the Mark V e-meter, which is kind of like probably I'd say the first kind of mass-produced machine that was made in, you made several hundreds.
The wooden one? The wooden one was mass-produced?
Yeah, the Mark V. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I remember there was some controversy, Mark, sorry to interrupt you, but remember there was some controversy about there was the British Mark V and the American Mark V, and one of them was, I think the American was junk, and then everybody had to use the British Mark V, and then they sorted the one out in America. I think that was with Don Breeding. Just take me out for a second. Probably. I'm gonna let him out.
No problem. It's okay. We'll just leave it there, and I'll keep yapping. So they had he's right. They did have a Mark V that was made in England, and they had a Mark V made in America. And eventually they just canceled all those, and they had one called the Mark VI. And the Mark VI it really was like a product of the 1970s and 80s. The Mark VI was a product of, and it was just like, I think so. Plastic.
Yeah. By the way, I put my dog in the meter. He was theta bopping, and he needed to get out. Yeah.
So then they had the Mark VI, and then they came out in the late 1980s. They came out with just a brand new thing called the Mark Super, or the Mark. It was the Mark Super 7. It was just the Mark
6 to be. Oh, did you do the Mark 6?
I did the Mark 6.
Okay, good.
And then the Mark 7 was kind of like a more fancy, a kind of cleaned up version of the Mark 6.
Yeah, supposedly it had more sensitive guts inside, and then they gave it a little brass label they stuck on.
And they called that one the Mark Super 7.
Right.
And then that one was pretty much the only meter that was made for maybe a decade, for probably I want to say all of the late 80s and all of the 90s. That was the meter.
Right.
And Scientology would sell these meters for $4,000 to $5,000 each, and you had to have 2 of them if you were a counselor.
Wow,
yeah,
I don't even remember. That must have been painful.
Yeah, well, there's discounts if you're this and how much you bought, how many.
Well, yeah, if you gave a shitload of money to the IAS, they automatically give you a 10% discount.
The cheapest you're going to get it, I think, was probably for $3,500 to $5,000, somewhere in there. Then, because it was so expensive, David Miscavige had this great idea. Hey, we could just take the same guts from this one and put them, and this one had digital readouts for where the dials were and stuff. We can take the same guts and put it back into a wood box like we had in the old days, and we can sell those for like $500, and we just take the digital readouts out and we just make them all mechanical sort of counters and stuff like that. And so Golden Era Productions produced those for a while, and I don't remember how much. I think they were probably like $750 or $500 or something like
wait, explain that one to me. I don't remember that.
It was the Mark V, but just a new version of the Mark V that Gold sold and made. And it was for students. It was for students.
The student meter. Yeah, I remember.
So the students could learn how to audit on a meter without having to shell out $7 to $10 grand for these two, because you have to have two. If you're doing counseling, you have to have a backup one in case the one you're using just takes a crap in the middle of the counseling. You got to pull one off the shelf and just keep going.
Right.
And so they were like, you can practice with this one, and then when you're ready, then you got to buy it. You got to pop for the big one. So they kind of they give you, it's basically like, here's the iPad. If you want the iPhone, well, that'll do everything. But right now, we're just going to give you an iPod for now.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And then in 1996, David Miscavige, he had an idea about what the e-meter should be based off of an L. Ron Hubbard lecture where L. Ron Hubbard said how the e-meter should work. And the e-meter that we were selling didn't work like that. And he had an idea how to fix that. And then that one was called the Mark VII Quantum. And that was better than the Super 7. And it was this, you couldn't use the Mark 6s anymore. And I don't even know what happened to the Mark V. They probably don't even have that because it's a piece of junk. And it was made by Golden Era Productions, and Golden Era Productions stopped making it. So I'm pretty sure that meter doesn't exist anymore. So everybody has to use a Quantum. And that's the one that's made by on the same assembly line that made Sony Walkmans. This is what Scientology tell you. Right. And that meter, for Golden Era Productions to produce that meter, it costs $40, and they still sell it for $5,000. And it does the exact same thing that pretty much all the other ones do. And here's a picture of that. We can just show you here. And that is what the Mark 8 Quantum looks like. And you can see that big white area, that oval, that is where the needle is. And you can see on one side of it, that little black line, that's the needle that moves across it. And then there's a bunch of readouts, and there's a little digital display up there in the middle near the top. And then these two knobs, one is a sensitivity knob, and one is called a tone arm. And that basically, the needle, if you just imagine that the needle wasn't an oval, but it went all the way around in a circle like a clock. If you could just picture the needle being able to go all the way around, the tone arm moves it into this one little view window of that whole circle that you would see. Right. So you could be reading down off of it, and the tone arm basically just moves the reaction of the needle into the middle of this dial so that it can be observed, because all the activity is happening somewhere else in that spectrum.
I think the theory was, as the person's resistance was lowering and they were feeling better, then where the needle would show up on the dial, it would no longer be viable. So they then have to adjust the meter to bring the needle back on. So anyway, that's and I think and then go ahead.
I was going to say, the new thing that this meter did, supposedly according to David Miscavige, was it was just a lot more sensitive, and that the sensitivity was variable. So as the person, there was less resistance, or there was less detectable activity on the needle. This new circuit they had designed would become extra sensitive to be able to see those things. Right. And now here's the part that's crazy to me about all this, is that almost all of what we've told you so far is open to interpretation by multiple people.
Completely.
So if I'm counseling Mitch and I say that he had a floating needle, and then he goes to the examiner after the counseling session and they say, no, he doesn't. And then if you saw the needle on the counseling, you go, yeah, it was floating. And then you go to the thing and you say, no, I think that's floating. The person who's doing the examining could go, no, that's not what a floating needle is. So for many, many years, there was a lot of debates about what these reads were. And was one of the things this film was supposed to solve, is that
Right.
we would show everyone these
Right.
are the reads.
Right. Once and for all. I mean, one question. Well, let me make one comment. Wasn't that also? It's a question for you because you were involved in this. Wasn't that also kind of the justification for why they were putting video cameras in the sessions, so they could kind of verify the reads and not really spying on you?
Yeah, well, that is also, that
Yeah.
could be a convenient,
Yeah. That
a
was sort of the
convenient excuse, but
no. That was the
so
cover story for why they put the video cameras in the auditing sessions. Oh, we just want to make sure that the reads were accurate. But
yeah,
well, then you don't need to record the sound. Why?
that's well, no, here's why you need. I'll tell you the excuse for the sound, is because if you ask the person,
Oh, right.
I'm going to try to keep my finger here. If you ask the person, what fruit do you like? And you say apples, bananas, kiwi. Well, kiwi is the one they like because it fell right after they said kiwi. So if you don't have the sound, you can't know if the needle, the correct answer, or the thing that they call it, the item that reads, it has to read at the millisecond as the question is done being answered.
Right. Yes, they say it's on the end of the last syllable.
Yeah. So if you say, like I showed, you say apple, banana, kiwi, then you go, okay, kiwi's the one because it happened right at the end. And so you have to have the sound, and then you have to have the picture because you have to be able to see the needle. And the way we would set up these auditing rooms in the Scientology organizations, all of the counseling rooms have at least 2 cameras. They have one that looks at the pre-clear, and it's looking over the shoulder of the counselor, and it's looking at, you can see the needle on the e-meter, and then you can see the person that they sit on the other side of the e-meter. And then there was another camera that would show both of them. So it was like a 2-shot of them sitting at the table. Well, is that what you would call that? Yeah, it was a 2-shot, just from a side view of them doing it.
We would call it a profile 2-shot.
Profile 2-shot, yeah. So we would put and we would put a very small button microphone. They would literally drill a tiny microscopic hole through the table, like a size of a pen head, like a writing pen or a pencil head, and then we would router out the bottom of the table, and we would slide a little gumdrop microphone right up in there, and you could hear everything in that entire in that counseling session, and the video and the audio would get recorded. And for many, many years, we would put all these analog audio-visual systems in to record the camera feed and the audio feed, and they would all feed to the one office in the building that could watch the sessions live, that you could just push a switcher and you could just go, I want to watch this room, I want to watch this room. You could just tap into anybody. And then there was a system that we developed where you could record any room to video recorders, and in Florida, they had bays and bays of VHS tapes that would just record every single room, no matter what. And then only the viewing station you would switch between them. And then eventually, when I was last there in 2005, the system that we had installed in some of these newer Scientology organizations was all computerized. So we still had the cameras and we still had the audio, but the thing that was added is that you would actually plug these new digital e-meters into the system, and it would record the reads on another track. Yeah, digitally. So it would have the video, it would have the audio, and it would also have a track that would record the reads. And then the person playing back the session could plug in their e-meter, and the e-meter would show the reads that happened in that session. And this is all done under the guise of correcting the counselors. So if they messed up a session, there could be some forensic recording of
like a photo replay at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so we could do, that's exactly, instant replay of the session. But now here's where it gets crazy. This is all stored, this new system, the digital system is the one they use now. So in these organizations, all of these counseling sessions with all these e-meters and these people that are paying Scientology to give them counseling, they have digital copies of all of this stuff. And the way they have it now is that David Miscavige can actually watch any session that he wants because it's been recorded. So if he
Probably from
tells,
anywhere in the world. I wouldn't be
absolutely,
surprised.
well, excuse me, it's all digital, so there's no reason
Right.
why they couldn't
Okay.
just have their each organization just copying
Right.
that to a server somewhere, and so that if he knows that, blah de blah, he told that person they were out ethics and they need to get some security checking or interrogated on the e-meter, it's very plausible that just a few days later he could be like, hey, did that guy
Right.
get a session? And they could say, yeah, here is a link to it.
Right.
So that's
Right.
kind
Or
of
if he's
crazy.
sitting around drinking with his buddies, he could say, "Oh, hey, Tom Cruise is in session. You want to check it out?" And they could just,
Well, he did do that. They weren't drinking, but he would watch Tom Cruise's sessions, and that was after Tom Cruise said he didn't want to be in a room he didn't want to get his counseling in a room with cameras, so he was just moved to a room that had really good undercover cameras. Like
right.
I remember doing some of these. If there was sensitive ones that people didn't want them, well, that became a smoke alarm cam,
Right.
or a thermostat cam,
Well,
or a
yeah.
clock cam, or a
Well,
picture cam. For many years, we put these
because you installed
cameras
them.
in pictures.
Well, it didn't
What's that?
also. Yeah, you installed them, so you would know. Mark, he's speaking from a voice of authority here.
Oh yeah, no, I've installed thousands of these
Yeah,
cameras.
and
I was
you
in
put a
Denmark for months, and the facility there was called AOSHEU, the
right,
Advanced Organization St. Hill of Europe, and we
right,
installed hundreds of rooms with these cameras, and we did that in Los Angeles, we did it in Florida, in any of these big
right,
if it's what Scientology is called an ideal org, or it's an advanced organization, all of those counseling rooms have cameras and audio recordings being done of all of the sessions
right,
that were there.
right. Yeah,
Um,
so I remember you installed a lot of them in those the auditor code thing. We talked about that when we remember we talked about the auditor's code, and
yes.
a lot of them were in there, like
Well,
in this very
it was in a frame, and it was just built in
yeah,
to the
like it
picture. You
integrated
could,
into the art, and there was a
yeah.
little, I mean, once you knew where it was all over. You could not look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't be like, you don't want to go subjective. You don't want to look right
Yeah,
in the
when
camera.
the auditor leaves the room, you don't want to be like picking your nose because
Yeah,
that shit's recorded
that's
forever.
true.
I mean, not
A
that they're
lot
going
of
to leave the
people,
room, but
yeah, a lot of people would say shit in the session after the person would leave, like, oh,
yeah,
I'm just going to go grab a reference real quick. Like if you needed to read something
yeah,
to
they
the
take a
person,
break, short break.
say we're going to take a break, I'm going to go grab that, and then you'd be in there and you'd be like, I hate this bullshit, and
Yeah, yeah,
this guy's a
he's
putz,
screwed.
and then somebody would be like, hey dude, you were being recorded when you said that, and you're
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
yeah, no, I knew. I didn't like after I was the one installing the cameras, I just assumed that every single room that any counseling was done in was being recorded just for the
absolutely.
rest of time.
Oh,
It's
I
just
started
that
to
is how
think
it
that
is.
any Scientology space I was in was being recorded. I mean, when I was
Yeah, I
working
don't
at
know.
SMP, I was looking at my office for bugs because I figured that
Yeah.
shit was everywhere. Just
Oh
like,
yeah. It's not hard either. Like I want to say the technology, even at the time, the cameras that we would use, the circuit board for the camera was smaller than a quarter.
oh yeah,
And this is in the 1990s. You could get these tiny little pinhole cameras, and you could put them in anything. It did you
well,
you could put them in an
you
event.
know, yeah. I mean, think about the fact that there's a 4K camera in here that'll shoot like a ProRes, cell
Oh
phone.
yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
getting a little camera is like nothing.
Yeah,
And
it
I mean,
literally.
it did like Scientology became like East Germany. I mean, the HCO became like the Stasi. They became like the East German police. And they were totally justified to bug everything and record everything, spy on everybody. It really got fucking nuts. But getting back to the film, hey, what about
Yeah,
the cast? There was a big cast. The only notable person I remember was Jenna Elfman.
that's
She was
right.
just transitioning into TV. She just got her first TV series. I think it was a show with Molly Ringwald called Townies. She sort of
Yeah,
right after we shot the E-meter, I remember she got that film because we had to go to LA. We did some pickups. Remember? We
yeah.
actually shot some pickups at PAC, at the Pacific Area Control, whatever. Um,
Command.
Command, thank you. I thought the video game Command and Control. Lebanon Hall, the sort of, remember that? We went in there and we sort of, and Jenna came in and she was all flush with success because she was like, oh, I got this series with Molly Ringwald, who now nobody even knows who she is. I mean, not Jenna, but Molly Ringwald. Maybe Jenna too. So.
Well, she hasn't. I mean, she does a little bit of stuff here and there. The thing I remember about Jenna was that she was friends at that time. She wasn't. She was Jenna Butella, I think. Was
right.
Her
oh, that's
last
right.
name.
Right.
And the only reason she was even on my radar is because she was in a Depeche Mode music video called Halo. And
because she was a dancer, right? She danced.
That's
right.
She was a dancer. So in the video, she's just dancing around like a circus freak, literally like a circus performer. That's what she's dressed as, and she's just dancing around the whole video. And when somebody told me, "Oh yeah, that Jenna got that," and I was like, "Jenna, that girl that," but she was going out with a guy named Bodie Elfman.
Right.
And Bodie and you knew each other.
Yeah, I knew Bodie from Celebrity Center, and I knew his father because he went to Cal Arts. We went to college together. I knew him a little bit. We weren't homies or anything like that, but I knew him, and I knew his mother, who's a lesbian, who owned a very famous shop on Melrose called LA Works, which the logo of which was featured in Blade Runner. I mean, this goes into a million different vectors.
Yes.
But yeah, Bodie was. Go ahead.
Bodie, and we used Bodie in a lot of these films, Bodie Elfman, and then eventually him and Jenna got married.
Right.
But I think Mitch wanted to, throw Jenna a bone and put her in a film here and there. And so
it wasn't even a bone. I mean, she was decent. She was very nice.
She was an actress.
She looked good. I thought she had a very unique look. She was tall, thin. She was a dancer. I thought she looked like really nobody else. Right.
Yeah. So Mitch kept submitting her on talent submissions. You would say, we need somebody for girl in hallway or, whatever the part is. And then he would submit somebody and then he would give an alternate and then maybe another alternate depending on how many people talent had done auditions for. And he kept submitting Jenna and she would get disapproved. And then David Miscavige would approve the alternate. And this happened multiple times, so much so that
raised suspicion, definitely.
Yeah, so then Mitch submitted her again, and Dave Miscavige wrote on the talent submission, "Stop submitting this girl. She looks like Linda Blair from The Exorcist." And so that was the last time. But now the craziest part of this was the talent chief. It was a gal by the name of Nancy Julienne at the time. She's gotten 7 more names since then, so nobody will find her. But Nancy was the talent chief, and when she went, she would do the auditions at Celebrity Center in Los Angeles for these Scientology or non-Scientology actors or actresses, and they would compile all these auditions and then they would send them up to Gold, and then the talent person at Gold would then propose them to Mitch, and then David Miscavige would be the next person who would approve it. And so she went back down, this Nancy gal went back down to Los Angeles to do some more auditions. And Jenna said, "Hey, did I get the part?" And she told her, she just said, "No, David Miscavige said you look like Linda Blair and not to submit you anymore." She told her exactly what he said.
Yeah.
She was never supposed to tell Jenna the reason.
Yeah.
She was just supposed to keep it quiet. And I remember, I'm pretty sure that girl went to the RPF for doing that. She went to the RPF for saying that to Jenna. She went to.
I'm not surprised. I mean, but really the amazing thing out of that story, Mark, is that he thought Jenna Elfman looked like Linda Blair. I mean, I couldn't imagine two people.
Well, yeah, it didn't help that after that, Jenna was in movies and she had her own TV show. I mean, this all happened post the Linda Blair comment. She didn't. I think she had a show called Dharma and Greg.
No, before Dharma and Greg, she was a co-star on Townies on the show.
But I think the Linda Blair thing happened right before she got
Could have. Yeah, it was a really bad scene. Yeah, the talent department was kind of famous for making faux pas like that. I mean, there was a girl came up to me one day, and she was one of the staff, and she was really in tears, and I felt really bad, and she started yelling at me that, "You never cast me because you think I'm too fat." I'm sorry to use that language, but I knew nothing about this. Like, just randomly,
Oh, so the talent person didn't want it because they couldn't get her approved or whatever. They just made up something like,
no, I never saw any of her auditions.
Oh, so it was just being vetoed before it got to you.
They lied to her and said, Mitch thinks you're fat.
Oh,
they just lied to her. And then she comes up to me one day and she's just in tears. Anyway, she was in the next film.
Yeah.
She got a part in the next film.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there was all kinds of
nonsense.
Really
nice person. Yeah.
As long as we're on the subject of talent, I cannot mention the talent department, Golden Arrow Productions, without saying, for all of you people who watched a movie called The Never Ending Story, or if you saw Daryl, or a bunch of movies that came out in the 1980s, there was a guy by the name of Barrett Oliver. And he was in those movies. He played the kid in Daryl, and I think he was the guy who's reading the book in Neverending Story, not the guy that's riding that fluffy dragon.
No, he was the kid who was riding the dragon around. He was the star of that film. Yeah,
he was the kid reading the book, Mitch.
Okay,
I went to school with him. Okay, take it easy
I know you
over
did,
here.
But he was my talent.
Yeah, he was the talent chief. That guy joined.
No, he was an assistant to the talent chief.
No, he was the talent, Mitch.
Well, I guess because Monica left, right?
That's right. Trust me. He was the assistant. And then this is what always happens in the Sea Org. If there's two people in the area and one of you takes off and escapes, you're now the boss. So he became the talent chief. And Barrett Oliver signed a Sea Org contract for 1 billion years. He was first working at the Celebrity Center in Hollywood, and then he got promoted from the Celebrity Center, and he went to the international base, and he was the talent chief. And eventually he was treated so horribly that he no longer wished to work there, and he said that he wouldn't, and he was out at that ranch they called Happy Valley, which is where the Sea Org kids lived, and he just lived in a tent there until they finally let him go. And now I think he's a very successful photography
he's a professor.
Yeah,
I tried to get in touch with him. He's a professor of a kind of very antique analog form of plate photography.
Yeah.
And
what is it called? A Woodbridge? The name of the?
I'm not sure, but it's a type of old box camera. Like 1880s kind of.
I think he's like one of the foremost experts in the subject.
Yeah,
he's
been
doing it for years.
But hold on a second. I just got to show you one thing. Okay.
Yeah. He was the guy who reads the book, and the kid that's like the kind of the adventure kid that rides the dragon is. Okay,
but that's Barrett Oliver, and he's on the dragon.
I know, you got to watch the whole movie. But the other kid rides the dragon for most of the movie. Then
okay.
At the end.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, that's Barrett Oliver on the little fluffy dragon guy.
You can take that out of there. I apologize for that.
It's all good. And I haven't seen the movie in 50 years, so I can.
Yeah, I have not either.
Too.
But
that's not on my my Netflix right now. But okay, so either way, this film had Jenna in it, and I'm trying to think if there was. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to say is when we shot this film, all of these reads when you're shooting these films. The reads that are occurring are not the actors making these reads occur on the needle, on the e-meter. There was a dude, and we had this Mac 2 FX Apple computer that had this sound program on it, and that's where all these reads lived. And because
state of the art.
Yes, very state. We were basically using an Apple computer as an audio playback device, but if the needle read wasn't exactly the way we wanted, you could adjust the sound wave to make it go a little longer, or you could go a little further, or more amplitude, or whatever it was.
Yeah, because you could. Is this it? You could feed audio signals into that e-meter, and they would show up as a read, right? An actual e-meter read.
Exactly. And that is how that's how we made all the reads, was with the sound. We used the sound out of the computer. And so what would happen is but there had to be a way remember how I said when you say something at the end of the sentence is right when the read needs to occur. And so but these reads couldn't just come right in. They had to have a little bit of a pre-roll on them. So sometimes when the actor would say something, or right when he would talk, he would, this guy Mike, his name was Mike Eves, he was this Australian dude, and he was underneath the table with his computer, and the actor would like give him a nudge with his foot or kick him or something, and then that would give him the cue to start the read, and then the timing was all worked out, so then the person would say banana, and then right at the end of that it would go. So you'd have to figure out all this, but if you would take a picture of this, it was the craziest thing, because he's sitting in between these two people under the table, so he's essentially just got two crotches in front of him and a computer, and they're kicking him down there, and I think I can't remember which film it was. I think it was for this E-meter reads film. This guy, Mike, he was always in trouble. He was the person that actually would operate that machine that we talked about in our last video, the Roxbury. He was the guy who operated that, and he was always blowing shots and titles. And so we couldn't get him sometimes. And then I had to learn how to do the reads. And I would be under there on the table and be like, okay, lights, camera. And then Mitch would be like, okay, action. I'd be like, and then I was the one getting kicked.
Well, but we had a lot of fun doing that.
Well, yeah, the other thing that was good about when we did these reads, when we shot E-meter reads, is because there was special effects involved, per the statistic system that L. Ron Hubbard worked out. If you had a shot that had SFX involved, then it was double. So we would get an extra point per shot because it had SFX in it.
It was only an SFX shot because it was being done by the SFX department. There was nothing about it that was a special effect.
Oh yeah, no, literally just because they came to the set, it's a special effect. Yeah. Well, that whole computer and all that, but that's a special effect. But if we blew something up, that was also, so whenever we did shots that had explosions or squibs or yeah, that's true. But this was a double-edged sword as well, because when you're shooting these E-meters, when you're shooting them up close and the whole entire frame is just this dial, when you're on the set, you see what you see. Right. In the camera and inside the optics, there could be just one little dust mote that just catches a little bit of light, and it's on a giant screen when these things are being viewed. It's the size of a headlight, this little piece of dust. So we'd crank out 100 shots in a day, and we'd be like, we're at 200 shots because they're double, and then they'd all be rejected because of this one little dust mote on the needle dial. And so then if a shot is blown, it's minus double. So now you have minus 200 shots on your stat. We would get penalized for a shot that was blown. It wasn't that you just didn't get to count it. It was like, oh no, not only do you get to count it, you now have to do more shots to make up for the shot that you blew. Right. So it was a lot of crazy politics involved in all this nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most telling things about that was eventually we used this training device called the Reads Recorder, which was part of the golden age of tech original release on how to train auditors, which you remember because we did all these videos, right? And we did one. Yes. This is really insane. So when the Reads Recorder, it was basically a board like a control surface that had a bunch of buttons on it. It had buttons for every type of needle phenomena, meter phenomena, and Miscavige had come up with all these drills, and it was going to make anybody at any church anywhere capable of being trained like they were at Flag, right? Yeah. So we shot these videos to present it at an event, and they decided to choose a child to be the auditor. Now, this has become a really controversial subject today. I mean, if you don't believe me, go tune into Serge Del Mar's channel and talk about the abuse of children who are being made to audit adults. But here at a Scientology event, we're showing, it was a 12-year-old girl. What was her name? Hollander.
Lauren Hollander.
Lauren Hollander. Just a cute little, she was like probably 10 then, right? And she's just
10 or 11. She was very, very small. Yeah, she's like very sassy.
Yeah, she was very sassy. And
She could yell at adults and boss them around, and it was like,
yeah,
yeah, you better do what she says.
yeah. But it was really bizarre because, now that we have all these reports about these children being groomed to audit adults and really about their deepest, darkest sexual
Yeah,
secrets. And
it's
right there in
really
a
weird.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
so who
super
did
inappropriate.
Miscavige want to show being trained as an auditor to audit children? I mean, it was his idea. He said, I want, get a little girl, blah, blah, blah. Later I got audited by a 14-year-old girl with Marty Rathbun screaming in her earpiece. And
Yeah.
the obscenities he was screaming in her earpiece, like,
Oh, we forgot to say that. Not only
oh,
in some
yeah,
of the at the end base, I don't know if this is everywhere else, but at least in the international headquarters, not only are they recording all that, the counselor has an in-ear
sometimes,
headphone,
yeah.
so that somebody like David Miscavige or Marty Rathbun or one of these other guys can be watching the playback, and Mitch, they say, hey, did you ruin that film on purpose? And Mitch is like, no, 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 no. And then Marty could be in the earpiece saying, ask him if he hates David Miscavige, and that's why he ruined.
Way
They could
worse
just
than
be
that.
well, I
Way
know,
worse than
I'm
that, yeah.
trying to be just general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask him if he performed a sexual act with that roll of film.
Oh my goodness.
No, that's
Anyway.
YouTube friendly. You can say sexual on YouTube.
No, but that was that wasn't a real thing, you maniac.
No, but it wasn't. But it could have been.
Yeah, it could have been. Yes.
Yeah, literally, it could have been.
There was a guy that built David Miscavige's office. He was an engineer, and he did all the plumbing and all the copper pipes in David Miscavige's office. And he was having his way with the pipes before he'd put all the fixtures on them and all that stuff. And so they had David.
You thought what I said was ridiculous.
I know, but this really happened, and they had to rip out all the copper. They had to rip out all the copper in the building. David Miscavige was like, "You rip it all out. I don't care if you clean it. Rip it all out and put all the new copper in."
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's watching the Boys spinoff Generation V on Amazon, but they just had a character who had that problem. On the fourth episode, they did a whole thing with that.
Oh my goodness!
Really funny.
Anyway, yes. So there's crazy things that'll come up in these counseling sessions. That came up in a counseling session, and that resulted in a lot of construction costs all of a sudden out of nowhere.
I wonder what happened to that guy. Yep.
The last thing I have to tell you about the film. So we shoot all these films, and you have all these scenarios in which the reads are shown and presented.
Right.
Well, separately, once you've seen that, you understand the basics and what the reads mean and all that. So the students then have to watch a different film, and it's called EM2. This is EM2, E-meter reads. There's another film called EM2A, E-meter reads drill film. And all it does is it just shows the read. It says, this is a floating needle. And then you're supposed to say floating needle. And then it shows all these different reads. And then it says, okay, now we're going to show you the reads, but we're not going to tell you which ones they are. And when the
and they
film
mix up
comes
the
on,
order. They mix the order up. They don't show them in the same order.
Yeah.
And you have to call them out, and you're sitting there in the film room going, floating needle. Like it's
That's right. And if you say the wrong one, then everybody looks at you like, you got to watch the film again. Yeah. So if you don't get them all right, you got to watch it again.
Yeah, and if you get them all right, nobody says bingo.
Yeah, there's no prize. There's no Bob Barker. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
You don't get to go to the showcase. You just get, okay, I don't have to watch this film anymore.
That's not one of those films that people could take a break in and go to sleep.
No, it was like, I want to say it was like a 10-minute film. It was a very short.
There was only 2 drill films. I think there were 2.
Yeah, there was PC
Indicator, EM10A, which was the PC Indicators drill film.
Yeah,
right?
And then there was the tone scale drill film.
Oh, right, because you got to guess people's tone.
Yeah, so there was the reads, tones, and
AEIOU.
Oh, I cannot wait to get to that one because I have stories about all of those people. Anyway, so yes, so that was the other film. So we knocked out 2 films today. And so once you saw that original film and then you had to do the Reeds film, you could go see the Reeds drill film. That was the one you'd end up going to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, because
every time you screwed up, you'd go back and they'd send you in.
If you called a read, if you were doing a counseling session and and you wrote, okay, that was a floating needle, but it wasn't, you got to go watch that film a whole bunch of times. And sometimes the assignment would be go watch that film 10 more times. It wasn't just go watch it once.
Right.
You had to watch it a bunch more. Okay, should we do some questions real quick and then?
Yeah, let's do that. Oh, while we're doing that,
yeah,
I found a couple of bonus. I hate to backtrack, but you go ahead and do that. I found when we were talking about TR14, the film with the devil, I found a better
you found another
photo.
shot. Oh, you said you were going to give me that. I totally forgot about that.
But you know what? I think I can pull it up here. I found a better photo of the set. Yeah, things kind of went to hell. So let me see. But you go ahead and do the questions. And,
awesome.
And I'll get it.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Here we go. Questions. And Arnie Van Halen says, hey, Marc, when you was in Copenhagen, did you ever meet a guy, Marcus Lassier? I don't remember a guy named Marcus. I remember a guy named Michael Garby, who was like a really hot shot technician that was there. He was actually, I think he might have been the smartest person I met in all of Scientology in Denmark. And then a lot of others. What's that?
I was going to say, hey, Arnie, that's a pretty sweet super chat.
Yeah.
Don't be dumb, Marc. Give me some. No.
Yeah, don't be dumb. Give me some. It says Swedish krona. We got to get my hands on that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you for that, Arnie. Sorry, I don't know your guy named Marcus. And Paula Flanagan super chat. Thank you for that, Paula. Super sticker, I guess they call it. I don't know all this lingo. Code Monkey, e-meters freak me out. Yeah, they shouldn't. It's really not that big of a deal. And also the current that they put through, you can't even detect it. Like, I don't think you don't get a tingly feeling or anything when you pick up these.
No, you can't. It's like if you put your fingers on a battery, like on a D cell battery, right? Something like that.
Yeah, you don't feel it.
Yeah, you don't feel it.
You don't feel it at all.
Okay, here's a picture.
Fluffy Wickets.
I put the picture up there. Yeah, here it is.
Oh, perfect. Here we go. I'm just going to read this. Fluffy Wicket says, DM is so dodgy in every way. TC is meant to be his best friend, and he does that. Ugh. Yeah, no, if Tom Cruise knew of half the things that David Miscavige did behind his back. I'll put it back this way because that's actually kind of cool. Oh, yeah. So when we did the film TR14, there was a close-up photo of Katie Mitchell in front of that sign, and this is actually what it looked like. So the thing we put up was just the hell sign, population infinite,
right?
All this other stuff that is there, it was there when we got there. This concrete thing was just sitting there.
And there's that concrete thing was featured in the first Terminator film. They went inside that concrete thing, and that's where the headquarters were. Where the what's his name? John Connor. John Connor, the John Connor adult who then went back. We first saw him in the film inside there, but then we bulldozed this trail in there and moved all the rocks around, put the sign in.
That's what the entrance to hell looks like, according to Scientology guys.
Yeah, but according to Scientology, it was just a hole in a mountain with a sign. This is according to Mitch Brisker.
Okay.
This is
hell. Population infinite.
Yeah, I mean, my background is Jewish, so I'm like, hell. Jews don't believe in hell. It's true. They don't believe in hell.
Okay, so there you go. Bonus TR14 pick.
Yeah, that was that.
Okay, Code Monkey question. Did Golden Era Productions ever use Video Toaster back in the early 90s? I do remember that they did have some stuff. Golden Era Productions was so far behind. So even during the days of the Video Toaster, they were still cutting 16 millimeter film and editing that.
on a moviola with a guillotine splicer.
Yeah, with like literally razor blades and tape. Yeah, that's how they were editing when the Video Toaster came out.
Same way you make sushi.
Yes.
Pretty much, except without, they don't use Scotch tape and sushi.
They use
I got one more picture here you got to put up.
Okay, good. This is, let me get rid of this comment. Thank you for that, Code Monkey. This is Katie Mitchell, and that is Evan, I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's my older son who's about to turn 30. So
wow. That's how old this pic is.
Yeah.
Oh my God, and she's even got the whole outfit, even with the wings on.
Yeah. So
wow.
We brought him to the set one day, and it was kind of a precious shot. So he's gonna
wow.
Anyway,
that's a long time ago. I'm gonna say it's early 90s.
Yeah, that would have been early 90s.
93, 94.
Yeah, absolutely, it would have been.
Okay, wow, look at that. Okay, and then we got a few left here. Japan of Green Gables, unrelated to Scientology films, but I just had a euro from Arby's. What is going on here, folks? Good for you. I'm glad you had a euro. Bo Beats, thank you for that, Japan of Green Gables. Did the subject of the whole ever come up, by the way, you two? We didn't, when we were shooting these films.
That was before the whole.
Yeah, it was a lot before the whole, but you know, a lot of the whole, we had little parts. We got to experience little test holes where you have it. So when we messed up a film, and we'll tell the whole story when we messed up the film and how that went when we cover that film, because that film might be a 2-hour video just on.
Which one are you talking about? TR1?
Yes, of course. I'm talking about TR. That might there could be, we might have to break that one into sequences. There was so many.
We didn't screw it up, Mark. We just.
I understand, but I'm just saying.
Okay, well, wait.
When we shot the last shot of that film, the entire shoot crew, which I want to say at that time was about 20 people, 25 people, right. We went and lived in tents in the dirt for 6 months after that film.
And this story, if anybody out there recognizes the story, you may have read this in any number of accountings from former Scientologists, former Sierra members, former Goldbergs. I think it might have even been in Mike's book.
It's in my book too.
Okay, that's where I read it. It's just that I read your book. I didn't read your book. I listened to it.
Oh, either way,
which was great because I know your voice so well. It was really good. Yeah, it was in there, and I guess I talked to people about it. It's a pretty famous story. And Miscavige used to have the sprinklers turned on.
Yeah, when we would sleep, well, before we got to the dirt tents, we were just sleeping out in the grass at night.
Right.
And we had these old army tents. They were like, I think MASH 477th used these tents. They were mildewy, really old canvas army tents that had wood stakes, and we had to set them all up. And then we get them set up like around 1 o'clock in the morning. And then at 2 in the morning, conveniently, all the sprinklers would go off in this area. Yeah. And the tents didn't have bottoms. So we were just sleeping on trash bags in the grass with the trash bags as blankets. And then the sprinklers would
I'm just going to stop you, Marcus. We're going to do a whole... It was epic in terms of bad, but I'm going to stop you because we're saving that. Okay.
Yeah, it was. Either way, that was a version of the whole that didn't pan out. Even though it was very successful to reprogram us.
Right, but there were little holes along the way. Before the big hole happened.
Thanks for that. M-Tone PA. Thank you for the super sticker, M-Tone. You feel free to ask a question next time. Ideal Borg, a.k.a. CO Bilf. The JWs also place an emphasis on video content, often high production value. Have you ever compared notes with an ex-witness who worked for Watchtower? No, I haven't, but I did know that when I was doing the audio visual systems, Mitch has kind of touched on this in later years when he went and did some stuff. But in the early 2000s, when I was designing the audio visual systems for all of Scientology organizations worldwide, David Miscavige directed me to do what the Mormons do. He loved their tech, and he loved their facilities, and he loved whatever they were doing with their audio visual aspect of that.
Big time.
That's the only, and that was when I still worked there for Scientology. So he didn't care about what the Mormons were doing. He just liked that the AV aspect of what they were doing.
Yeah,
that's what we should.
Well, not just that, but I just have to add, if anybody wants to hear more about this, I did an episode with Salik Sansol on Cults to Consciousness. I did an entire interview with her about how David Miscavige is influenced by the way that the Mormon Church is organized, not just AV, but you know, he's done to Scientology. He's like, okay, the Mormon Church 100% exists on tithing and donations.
Yes.
And he's turned the Church of Scientology into that. And he was very influenced by them. But when we were setting up Scientology Media Productions, here, I'll show this to you real quick. This will where the hell did this go? Oh yeah. So we all went up here, Mark, put this on the screen when it loads. Just as proof, when we were setting up Scientology Media Productions, he sent us all up to BYU to visit BYU TV, which is the Mormon-owned station. Yeah. He's like, go up there. When Mark says, go do what the Mormons are doing, he like literally sent us up there and was like, go take a look. It'll load. It's still loading.
Okay, it's all good.
Big fucking file. There it is. Sorry about that.
There it is. Okay, wow.
Yeah, so,
look at that. That's their broadcast facility.
Yeah, and they were really nice. They gave us a really nice tour. We spent a few hours there, and yeah, they based this on. They went to a Discovery Network studio.
Yeah.
And then they copied that.
Yeah.
So, and then they were really not. They sent us to downtown. I don't have the pictures loaded, but they sent us to downtown Salt Lake, and they gave us a tour of the Tabernacle, with that incredible cathedral. And do you remember, Mark, when you would do events, because you were producing events, you would do foreign languages, right? So people could put a headset on. How many foreign languages would you do you think?
4.
Okay.
Spanish, French, Italian,
right.
And
so
one other one I can't remember.
Maybe Japanese or Chinese or something, an Asian language. The Mormons at that Tabernacle, they do in real time 120 languages. Wow. So you want to know why Miscavige was jealous of these people?
Unbelievable. Yeah, we had 4 booths, little they might as well have been porta potties with carpet on the sides of them, and then you just set up a mic in there, and the guy would be like,
they put the
no.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so he Mormoned the shit out of Scientology.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, because I think at a certain point he's like, why are we doing all this work to charge people for courses and selling them stuff? Why don't we just take the money?
Yeah.
Like, just take the money.
Yeah, because who do you think pays for all those Mormon cathedrals that open up?
Yeah,
the Mormons do. Yeah, there's more to it. I mean, all Mormons are like on their version of the organizing board. They call it a stake.
Yeah.
And they have a bishop, and then what he did was he started these OT committees, and then their OT chairman, they are literally Scientology bishops. They're the bishops in Scientology. It's
That's
crazy
exactly right.
parallel. Yeah,
it is really, crazy. I never thought about it like that. Like that he was like,
well, because see, I wasn't in the Sea Org, and so that allowed me to have a very special perspective.
Yeah,
okay, not everybody agrees
that you have unique qualified for, and a unique credibility to be able to address the aspect of those things.
Yeah, because I would see them and I go, now wait a minute, So, or if you're a Sea Org member, you're too worried about, it's a lot of stress being a Sea Org.
Oh yeah, you're not worried. You're just worried about keeping your ass out of the fire today, right now.
Yeah, right now. Yeah, exactly.
That's what you're worried about.
Yeah, you just don't want to go into session in Theta Bop or Rock Slam.
Yeah.
Oh Rocket my goodness. Any of that crazy stuff. So there you go.
Awesome, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Let me put up. Let me see if I've got all these goodies here. I can at least put those up. We really didn't do anything with that yet. Check out Mitch's channel at Scientology: The Big Lie.
Thanks, Marc.
And then if you're watching on my channel, go over to Mitch's channel and subscribe.
And watch it again. No.
Yeah, watch it all over again. And if you're on his channel, hey, throw me a like and a subscribe as well. 86% of the people that watch the Blown for Good channel are not subscribed. I get a lot of views, but not from subscribers. I'm not sure exactly how all that works. Okay, you're doing the video with me, so
just so you know, I mostly watch Claire. Okay.
Yes, I believe it. That's why she's here. Yeah. Someone's got to be halfway decent to look at in these videos.
Well, no, it's not that. She's just easy to listen to.
She is. She is. Thanks a lot, guys. We will see you in the next episode. We haven't exactly figured out which film we're kind of juggling which films we're going to do, but we'll get you on the next one. And thank you. And,
you guys are great. Thank you so much.
Yep. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks.
Yes.